I didn't shout. I didn't bang on the door. I didn't even dare breathe too loudly. Because my newborn, my tiny son, only 17 days old, was on the other side of that door, inside a house that wasn't mine, in the arms of a woman who had just locked me out in the middle of the night. People always talk about the maternal instinct like it's something gentle, something soft and warm. But that night, standing barefoot on the cold wooden porch of my brother's home, I learned that instinct can be sharp, raw, primal. The porch light flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the yard. The air smelled like rain, even though the sky was clear. Crickets buzzed in the grass, loud enough that I almost believed I imagined that soft click from the door. But the truth sat heavy in my chest, because I knew that sound too well. She locked it. She locked me out, with my baby still inside. My fingers trembled as I reached for the doorknob again. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the handle had jammed. But when I twisted it, the resistance was unmistakable. A deliberate kind of resistance. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice as I knocked. "Emma?" I called, forcing calm into every syllable. "It's me. Can you open the door?" Silence. Only the porch light hummed in response. I pressed my forehead lightly against the wood, closing my eyes. I could feel the faint warmth from inside, like the house itself was mocking me, reminding me that everything I loved in this world was only inches away and completely out of reach. My ears strained for any sound, breathing, movement, a cry, but I heard nothing. Just emptiness. Just fear. I knocked again, a little harder. "Emma, please, please open the door." Still nothing. A slow ache pooled in my chest, settling deep, like a weight. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know why she would do something like this. And I didn't know how long my baby had been out of my sight. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Something was wrong in that house. And whatever it was, it had finally pulled me into the center of it. Normal life/setup. If you had asked me a month earlier what I thought of my sister-in-law, I would have said she was a little intense, but sweet. Emma was the kind of woman who knit blankets and baked bread and posted inspirational quotes about gratitude. She hugged just a bit too long, talked just a bit too loudly, and loved my brother Mark with the kind of starry-eyed devotion that always made me smile a little. I never imagined she would hurt me. Not in any real way. Not deliberately. But things change when a baby enters the picture. Sometimes people change too. After giving birth, I wasn't supposed to travel, but my mother had begged me to visit my brother's home 2 towns over. They hadn't met the baby yet, and Emma had been calling and texting constantly. "I can help," she kept saying. "You need rest. Come stay with us for a few days." I was exhausted. Emotionally, physically, spiritually. My son didn't sleep unless he was curled against my chest. My stitches still pulled every time I moved too fast. My breasts ached constantly from breastfeeding. So the idea of help, of a full night's sleep, it sounded like salvation. My husband Daniel had been working overtime to make up for the bills piling up from the births. He kissed me on the forehead before we drove off and said, "You deserve a break. Let them spoil you." I believed that. I wanted to believe that. When I arrived at my brother's house, everything seemed fine at first. Better than fine. Warm, cheerful, welcoming. The house smelled like cinnamon and something floral. The air hummed with quiet laughter. My brother hugged me so tightly I winced a little. and Emma practically snatched the baby out of my arms in her excitement. She bounced him gently, whispering little coos against his forehead. "Oh, look at him," she breathed. "He's perfect." I smiled tiredly, leaning back on the sofa. "He's been keeping me up all night." "You poor thing," she said, brushing my hair behind my ear, almost too gently. "We'll take care of you here. You can trust us." And I did. Over the next 2 days, Emma insisted I rest. She cooked, she cleaned, and took the baby whenever he fussed, telling me, "Just sleep, you need to recover." Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the hormones. Maybe it was the sheer relief of not being alone. But I started to let her. A little at first, then more. Then far more than I realized. It wasn't until the third evening, while I stood on the porch getting some air, that I noticed something strange. The living room lights were off, the curtains had been drawn, and I could hear Emma's voice. Low, urgent, coming from inside. At first I thought she was on the phone, but then I recognized the small, stilted cadence of the sound. She was talking to my baby. Whispering. Almost chanting. I frowned and stepped closer, trying to hear her words through the wall. Her voice trembled slightly. "You're safe with me. I won't let her take you again. I promised. I promised." My whole heart paused mid-beat. Her? Take him? Again? A chill crawled up my spine. I opened the door slowly, quietly. Emma was sitting on the floor, rocking my baby in her arms. So intently focused on him, she didn't even look up. Her eyes were wide, glassy, like she hadn't slept at all. She kept whispering the same line. "You're mine. I'll take care of you. I won't let her hurt you." And that was the moment. The very first whisper of suspicion that something was very, very wrong. I should have said something. I should have stepped in. I should have picked up my baby right then and there. But exhaustion is a powerful silencer. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself new mothers say strange, emotional things sometimes. So I brushed it off. I told myself Emma was just bonding, just being dramatic, just tired. I had no idea how quickly those whispers would turn into something far darker, something dangerous, something that would strand me barefoot and helpless outside my brother's home with my newborn behind a locked door.
For the rest of that evening, something inside me stayed alert, awake in a way my body wasn't. Even when I tried to sleep, every creak in the house made me sit up. Every sound my baby made pulled me out of half dreams. And every time I closed my eyes, I heard Emma's whisper, "I won't let her hurt you." But the next morning, she acted completely normal. Too normal. She wore a bright yellow apron and made blueberry pancakes. She fluttered around the kitchen like a cheerful bird, humming some soft song while flipping each pancake with exaggerated grace. If she saw the way I watched her, careful, cautious, she didn't show it. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, pouring hot coffee into a mug in front of me. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, better." "Good," she said with a smile, brushing flour off her cheek. "You're looking more rested already." But it wasn't rest. It was wariness. My brother came downstairs a little later, rubbing his eyes, yawning, completely oblivious to the uneasy current swirling beneath the polite morning chatter. He kissed the top of my head and said, "Glad you're here, sis. The baby looks good." He didn't notice that Emma had positioned herself between me and my son's bassinet. He didn't notice the way she kept glancing at me whenever I reached toward him. And he didn't notice how her smile faltered every time I picked him up. But I noticed. Mother's notice. After breakfast, when I reached to take my son out of her arms, she hesitated. Just for a second. Barely a heartbeat. But it was there. A tightening of her grip. A flicker of reluctance. Then she loosened her hold and handed him over, with a quick smile, though her fingers brushed my arm longer than they needed to. "You should nap again today," she said lightly. "You still look tired." "I'm okay," I murmured. "Are you? Really? It's only been a couple weeks. Postpartum is serious, you know." My throat tightened. The implication wasn't subtle. I shifted my son higher against my shoulder, rubbing his back gently. "I appreciate the help, but I'm fine." She didn't respond, just watched me with a strange mix of concern and something else, something unreadable. And the longer I stayed in that house, the heavier that gaze felt. More signs. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from my husband. "Daniel, miss you both. Call when you can." I smiled, relieved, and went to pick up my phone off the coffee table, only to find it gone. I frowned. "Have you seen my phone?" Emma looked up from folding laundry. "Your phone?" "No." I checked the sofa cushions, the counter, the hallway. Nothing. Finally, after nearly 15 minutes, I found it on the kitchen windowsill, behind a potted plant I hadn't even looked at since arriving. When I picked it up, the screen was warm, like someone had been holding it recently. But Emma just smiled when she saw me. "Oh, you found it! Baby brain, huh?" A cold prickle slid down my spine. That night, after everyone went to bed, I tried to call Daniel. The phone barely rang twice before the screen flashed. Call failed. No signal. I walked through the house, holding the phone up toward the ceiling, trying every room. Still nothing. Then I stepped outside to the porch. Suddenly, full bars. My stomach knotted. This wasn't normal. This wasn't accidental. Someone had turned on the household signal jammer. But who would do that? And why? I didn't get the chance to think long. I heard footsteps behind me, followed by Emma's voice. "What are you doing out here?" Her tone wasn't sweet anymore. It wasn't warm. It wasn't even neutral. It was sharp. Suspicious. I turned slowly. "Just getting some air." "You should be sleeping," she said, stepping closer. "You need your rest." Her eyes glinted under the porch light. My chest tightened. There was something unhinged in the way she looked at me right then. Something possessive and territorial, like she saw me not as a guest, but as a threat. A threat to what? The night everything shifted. That night, our last night there, though I didn't know it yet, was when everything broke open. I had just finished nursing the baby. My eyelids felt heavy, my body bone tired. My brother had already slept on the couch after a long day of yard work. Emma had taken the baby for just a moment while I went to wash my face. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked strange to me. Pale, tense, thinner than I remembered. Motherhood carves you out from the inside. It hollows you and fills you at the same time. But this felt different. This felt like someone had been slowly taking pieces of me without me noticing. I dried my hands and stepped into the hallway. And that's when I heard it. A soft voice, rhythmic, too familiar now. Emma's voice. But this time, the words were different. The tone was different. "You're okay. You're okay. I won't let her hurt you again. I know what she did. I know what happened." My breath caught. Take him again? What was she talking about? My heart thundered as I moved closer to the nursery door. I pressed my ear to the wood. She kept whispering, her tone trembling. "She doesn't love you like I do. She's not like a real mother. Not like me. I'll keep you safe." The floor tilted beneath my feet. Real mother? Not like me? I took a slow breath, bracing myself, then pushed the door open. Emma jerked her head up immediately. Her eyes were red, swollen, wild. She clutched my baby tight against her chest. Too tight. My voice shook. "Emma, what are you doing?" She didn't answer.
just rocked him. Hard. I stepped closer. Give him to me. No. It was barely a word, more like a hiss. My skin prickled. Emma, he needs to sleep. Give him to me. You don't get to take him again, she whispered, her voice cracking. Not again. Not after what you did. My stomach lurched. What I did? Emma, I don't understand. Her eyes filled with tears, angry tears, terrified tears. You don't remember, do you? What are you talking about? She shook her head violently, clutching my son tighter. No, you don't get to pretend. Not after you abandon your first baby. The room spun. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? I breathed. My brother told me everything, she whispered. About your first pregnancy. About how you left the hospital without him. How you let the nurses take him away. My body froze, every nerve firing at once. There was only one problem. None of that had ever happened. Not one word. I opened my mouth to speak, but that was the moment the baby started crying, and Emma stood up abruptly, and the door behind me slammed shut. Then, the lock clicked. The click of the lock was soft. Too soft. Almost gentle. But the sound shot through me like a gunshot. My hand flew to the doorknob. I twisted it hard. Locked. From the inside. Emma stood across the room, holding my son so tightly his cries came out thin and strangled. Her breath was ragged, like every inhale scraped against something sharp. Emma, I said quietly, forcing my voice to stay level, unlock the door. She shook her head fast. Too fast. No, I can't. Not when you're like this. Like what? My voice cracked despite my efforts. Like unstable. The word hit me like a slap. You're not sleeping. You're panicking. You're confused. Her breath quivered. You're not safe to be around him right now. I stepped forward. She stepped back instantly, cradling the baby away from me. Don't come any closer. I froze. My son's cries grew louder. They grew desperate. Every instinct in my body screamed to move, run, grab him, but the wrong step could break everything open. I lifted my hands slowly. Okay, I'm staying back. I'm not coming any closer. She blinked hard, shoulders trembling. I'm not the enemy here. I know, I lied. I know you're trying to help. It was the only way to keep this from spiraling into something unthinkable. But she wasn't listening. Her eyes darted everywhere, unfocused, as though she was watching scenes that only she could see. He told me you ran, she whispered. He told me you panicked during labor, that you held the baby and then just left him there, that you couldn't handle it. My stomach twisted. My brother hadn't told her that, because none of that ever happened. But someone had. Emma, I said softly, I never had a baby before him. I never left anyone. I never abandoned anyone. She flinched, as if I'd shouted, "Stop lying to me!" The force of her voice rattled the window. The baby cried harder. I swallowed, pulse pounding. Okay, then tell me what you think happened. She shook her head violently. No, I can't. Not when you're like this. I said nothing. The silence thickened. And then slowly, she began to speak. Her confession. I held him, she said, staring down at my child like he was hers. When they took him away from you in the hospital, I was there. I helped. I saved him. My blood chilled. She wasn't talking about something real. She was talking about a delusion. Emma, where would that have happened? What hospital? She frowned, blinking rapidly. Her breath hitched. I don't know the name, but I remember the room. I remember the walls. I remember the tiny hat he wore. My baby hadn't worn a hat that night. He'd been born in a birthing center, not a hospital. None of it matched reality. She wasn't remembering. She was constructing. Someone told you this. Someone planted this in your head. No, she snapped. I remember. I remember everything. I remember holding him first. I remember promising him I would never let anyone hurt him again. I remember how scared he was. My vision swam. I felt the edge of panic rising. Emma, you know. She stared at me with blank, bottomless eyes. No, she said softly, he's the same. I knew it the moment I saw him. My throat tightened. This wasn't about my baby. This was about something older, something festering. Emma, I said slowly, carefully, did you have a child? Her mouth twitched. Did you lose a baby? Something shattered across her face. Grief, fury, something cracked open and bleeding. She screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was raw, animal, broken. I flinched. The baby flinched. She collapsed into the rocking chair, shaking violently, clutching my son like he was the last living part of her. I wasn't enough for him, she sobbed. I wasn't enough, and they took him from me, and no one believed me, and no one helped me. And then you just walk in with a perfect baby like it's nothing? My pulse thundered. Her pain was real. Her loss was real. But her target was wrong. Emma, I whispered, you're hurting. I see that, but you can't. Don't tell me what I can't do, she hissed, eyes snapping up. I'm protecting him. I took a slow breath. From who? From you. My heart stopped. In one single slow motion, Emma rose from the chair and she moved toward the window. Not the crib, not the rocking chair, the window. The open window. My breath broke in my chest. Emma, I whispered, stop. Her hands trembled violently. He deserves better. He deserves his mother. He deserves someone who won't fail him. I haven't failed him. She looked at me, really looked at me with something like realization, something like anguish, and something like surrender. You already did, she whispered. You just don't remember it. And she stepped closer to the window. The breaking point. I moved without thinking. Everything inside me, the fear, the adrenaline, the animal instinct took over. I lunged forward before my brain even fully registered the motion. Emma, no! She spun away, clutching the baby close, screaming. The chair toppled. My shoulder slammed into the wall. Her elbow struck my jaw. Pain bloomed hot across my face. But I didn't feel it. Not really. All I felt was the absence of weight in my arms. The room erupted into chaos. Furniture scraping, frantic footsteps, the baby's wailing, rickaying like glass shattering. And then, a thud. A gasp. A cry. My baby's cry. He was on the floor. Emma had tripped. For a split second, everything froze. My ears rang. My vision tunneled. I threw myself forward, scooping my son into my arms, wrapping myself around him, shielding his tiny body with my own. He screamed, alive, breathing, unbroken. And I sobbed with relief so fierce it tore something inside me. Behind me, Emma crumbled to her knees, staring at us with wide, empty eyes. I was trying to save him, she whispered. I backed away, clutching my child, shaking. No, I said, voice trembling with a rage I'd never heard from myself before. You were trying to replace yours. Her face twisted. Is that so wrong? And then, a pounding on the door. My brother's voice, terrified. Emma, open the door. Open it now. Her eyes snapped toward the door, then back to me. And for the first time since I'd arrived at that house, she looked truly afraid.
I don't remember turning the doorknob. I just remember the sound. A clean, hollow click. The kind that doesn't echo but sinks. The kind you feel more than you hear. My hand was still on the cold metal when I realized the door wasn't opening. At first, I thought it was jammed. Maybe the frame had swollen from the temperature change. I twisted again, leaning in with my shoulder, but the door didn't budge. A strange calm washed over me, one of those protective mother instinct moments where your mind tries to shield you from panic. I knocked softly. "Leah?" My voice was steady, almost gentle. Nothing. I knocked louder. "Leah, the door's not opening." Still nothing. I pressed my forehead against the wood, listening past the thud of my heartbeat. On the other side, I could hear faint movement, footsteps, maybe a cabinet closing. Something too casual, too normal for the way my chest was tightening. "Leah," I said again, a little sharper this time. "Open the door, please." I waited. A single beat, then two, and then her voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Hold on, I didn't realize you weren't inside." There was guilt in her tone, and something else, something like embarrassment. I tried to swallow the lump rising in my throat. "It's okay," I said. "Just please, open the door. He's inside." The he didn't need a name. Leah knew who I meant. My son, my newborn baby. Silence again. I knocked harder. Something inside me was unraveling, quiet but fast. "Leah," I said, louder now, fear creeping in despite my effort to keep it contained. "Open the door." I could feel my breath getting shallow, not the dramatic kind, just the thin, strained breaths that come when panic tries to stay polite. Then I heard it, a soft wail, my baby's cry. It wasn't frantic, it was that slow, unhappy little sob newborns make when they've been put down longer than they like. But hearing it from the wrong side of the door made something inside me break. My palms pressed flat against the wood. I leaned my whole body into it, as if closeness might translate into protection. "Leah," I said, my voice trembling for the first time. "He's crying. Please, open the door." This time, I didn't hide the urgency. Her footsteps drew closer. Through the door, I could hear her fiddling with the lock, muttering under her breath. Sorry, I didn't mean this stupid lock gets jammed. Just a second." The knob rattled, then stopped. "I think it's stuck," she said. Stuck. For a second, all the blood left my body. Not because I believed he was in danger, but because being separated from your newborn, even for a minute, feels like someone has reached into your ribs and pulled them apart. There is no rationality, no patience, just pure primal panic, the kind your body was built to feel. "Leah," I said, forcing my voice not to shake, "step away from the door. I'm going to push." No, don't push it. Caleb will kill me if the frame breaks. Just give me a second to get a coin." I didn't care about coins or frames or whatever explanation she was piecing together, but that cry on the other side, it cut straight through the door. "Leah," I said, softly now, almost whispering, "please, just get him, pick him up." Through the wood, I heard her hesitate, a pause that felt far too long. Then, "Okay." Footsteps. The baby's cry softened, muffled a bit. She must have picked him up. Relief flooded me so quickly I almost felt sick.
I leaned against the siding, closing my eyes for a moment. But that relief lasted only a few seconds, because as she walked him around, shushing him, whispering to him, I heard something in her voice I couldn't name, a tenderness that didn't sound like impatience, a softness that wasn't directed at me. Her whispered words were too quiet to make out, but the tone made me press my ear against the door. And that's when I realized something. She wasn't trying to get back to the door. She wasn't trying to unlock it. She was lingering, holding him, talking to him, longer than necessary, too long, even when his cries had already stopped. I felt a strange chill run through me, not because she meant harm, but because something about her attachment, her quietness, felt off. Not dangerous, just misplaced, unsettled, like she'd slipped into a moment that wasn't hers. I knocked again, gentler this time. "Leah, is he okay?" "Yeah," she said, but her voice sounded far away. "He's fine. He's good. Good. Not, I'm trying the lock again. Not, hang on. Just good." Something tightened in my chest. "Leah," I repeated, firmer now, "please come open the door." Nothing. Just the soft, rhythmic sway of her footsteps, her humming. I didn't even realize I was gripping the doorknob until my knuckles turned white. It wasn't anger. It was fear, the quiet, suffocating kind that whispers, "Something isn't right." I knocked again, louder. "Leah, open the door now." My voice cracked, not angry, not aggressive, but raw. All the fragile places motherhood makes in you, every one of them was exposed. Finally, her footsteps came back toward me. The lock clicked, the knob turned, and the door opened just a crack, slowly, as if she wasn't ready to face me. When the door finally swung wide enough, I saw her face first. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't angry. She looked dazed, like she'd stepped out of a dream she didn't want to leave. My baby was tucked in her arms, tiny face pressed against her chest, breathing softly, peacefully. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding, but something in her expression, a flicker, a shadow, told me the night was far from over. Not just because she'd locked me out, but because I'd just glimpsed a part of her I'd never seen before. A part I didn't understand yet. A part that scared me in a way I couldn't explain. Not dangerous, not malicious, just fragile in the wrong way. She handed him over slowly, almost reluctantly. And as I held him tight against my chest, I knew whatever secret had been simmering beneath the surface in this house, whatever tension I'd felt for weeks now, this was only the beginning. I held my son against my chest, rocking him slowly, trying to steady both of us. His tiny hands curled into fists against my shirt, his warm body a reminder of why I couldn't let the fear take over. I looked at Leah. Her eyes were glossy, her lips trembling, but she wasn't speaking. Finally, I drew in a shaky breath. "Leah, we need to talk." She blinked. I guess we do." I moved fully inside, shutting the door gently behind me. Every part of me still wanted to run, to hold him close and never let anyone near again. But I needed to understand. I needed answers. And part of me wanted to help her too, because beneath that tension, I saw the grief and fear she was carrying. "Why did you lock me out?" I asked quietly, letting the words hang in the air. Her fingers twitched over the hem of her shirt. I don't know. I panicked, she admitted finally. Her voice was small, almost defeated. I was trying to keep him safe, and I thought if I just kept him here, nothing bad would happen. I blinked, trying to process it. You panicked, and you forgot me. I gestured to the baby in my arms. Your panic put him at risk. Her shoulders sagged. I know, and I'm so sorry. I was selfish. I didn't think beyond my own fear. The words hung in the room like smoke. I studied her face. She wasn't lying. Her panic was real, but her actions had consequences. I had to make sure she understood that. You can't do that, I said firmly. Even if you think you're protecting him, even if you're scared. He's my son, and he needs his mother, not just someone who thinks they're keeping him safe. She flinched at the words, but nodded slowly. I understand. I really do. I exhaled. Part of me wanted to forgive her immediately. Another part of me still trembled from the night's terror. I realized that the forgiveness wouldn't come instantly. It would take time, but acknowledgement was a start. And I need you to tell me everything, I said. Why you said those things about me leaving a baby before, where that came from. She looked down, twisting the edge of the blanket around the baby's shoulders. I think I read too much into things, she admitted. I didn't know your history. I didn't know your life. But I've seen how fragile this time is. And I projected. I imagined something that wasn't there. Her voice cracked, but the honesty was there. And that honesty was enough, for now, to begin repairing the trust that had shattered in a single lock. I wrapped the baby more securely in my arms, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat against mine. And in that quiet, I realized something important. The danger had passed. The storm had ended, not because the house was perfect or because Leah had changed completely, but because truth and honesty were finally in the room. I know you didn't mean to hurt him, I said finally, but you need to understand. What you did could have been catastrophic. You need to respect that, even when you're scared. I will, she whispered. I swear. I looked at her for a long moment. The anger I'd felt was still simmering, but it had transformed into something else. Clarity, understanding, and the fragile beginnings of trust. Let's sit, I said, gesturing toward the couch. I eased onto it carefully, still holding the baby. She sat across from me, hands folded tightly in her lap, head bowed. The air between us was tense, but no longer toxic. It was fragile, but repairable. I don't want to hate you, I said quietly, even after tonight. I don't want him to grow up in fear of anyone in this family. But I need to know if this ever happens again, we'll handle it together. Agreed? She nodded. Agreed. The relief was immediate, but tempered. I knew the night had tested both of us. Our patience, our judgment, our love for a child we both cared for in different ways. But it had also revealed something I didn't expect. Vulnerability could be a bridge, not just a weapon. I looked down at my son, breathing softly against my chest, and whispered, "Everything is going to be okay."
The next morning, the house felt different. Not brighter, not cleaner, not magically fixed, but quieter, lighter. Something had shifted. An invisible weight had been lifted, even if just a little. Leah moved around the kitchen cautiously, brewing coffee, flipping pancakes with care. There was no smile plastered on her face this time, no pretense, just a kind of awareness, a recognition that yesterday's chaos had changed everything. I held my son in the living room, rocking him gently, noticing how his tiny fingers gripped mine.
I realized in that small, quiet moment how fragile these first weeks really were, not just for me, but for everyone involved. Fear can distort reality, can make people act in ways that don't reflect who they truly are. When my brother woke up and shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, I caught the tension in his posture before he even spoke. "Everything okay?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said, though my voice had that brittle edge of someone who'd been pushed to her limit and survived. "Better now." He nodded, seemingly sensing the undercurrent between Leah and me. He didn't need details. He just knew the night had been intense. Laying the groundwork for forgiveness. After breakfast, we all sat down together. "I want to understand," I said, looking directly at Leah. "I don't want this to ever happen again. And I don't want misunderstandings between us. Not for the baby, not for us." She nodded slowly. "I know. I can see now how panicked I was. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was afraid of doing something wrong, afraid of losing him. And I forgot the most important thing, that he's your son, that he's your mother." The way she said it, soft, reflective, without excuses, made something inside me shift. I could feel the tension, the fear, and the lingering anger easing thread by thread. "I forgive you," I said finally. "Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger won't help any of us. We have to focus on the baby, on making sure he's safe and loved and never scared like that again." Her eyes glistened. "Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll do better. I promise." And in that promise, I felt a fragile sense of relief. It wouldn't erase the fear I'd felt, but it was a start, a beginning. Facing family reality. Later that day, my brother and I had a quiet conversation in the backyard. You didn't tell her anything, right?" I asked carefully. "No," he said, frowning. "I didn't. I swear. I had no idea she would panic like that. She's never acted like this before. I don't know what came over her." I leaned against the railing, feeling the sun warm my face. "I know she didn't mean harm, but this was dangerous, and it could have been prevented. We need boundaries, for all our sakes." He nodded. "I agree. I'll talk to her. We'll set clear rules. No more locking doors, no more half-truths. We owe that to him. And to you." The weight in my chest lifted a little more. Accountability was important. Rules and boundaries mattered, but so did compassion, understanding, and the slow work of rebuilding trust. A new understanding. By the end of the day, Leah had begun to relax around me. She helped with the baby, handing him to me for feedings, stepping back, letting me hold him in my arms. She smiled, not the forced, fake kind from the night before, but a quiet, careful smile. "Thank you for trusting me again," she said softly. I shook my head. "I don't fully trust you yet. Not completely, but I can see you're trying, and that's enough for now." She nodded, and for the first time we were both silent in a way that didn't feel heavy or tense. It felt possible, like we could breathe, like we could start over. The baby cooed in my arms, small, perfect, and innocent. And I realized something. The night of terror, the lockout, the panic, all of it, had shown me the raw edges of people I loved. Not the polished, safe versions, but the real ones. Fragile, flawed, sometimes scared, sometimes acting poorly, but human. And in that humbling, raw truth, there was room for forgiveness, room for growth to be rebuilt, carefully, slowly, day by day. First steps of healing. Over the next few days, the tension in the house eased. Leah and I found small rhythms together. She brought him to me for feedings, helped with diaper changes when I asked, and even laughed quietly at the little hiccups he made. It wasn't instant friendship. It wasn't a perfect reset, but it was real, honest. And after the night I had lived through, real was enough. I started to realize something important. Family isn't just about blood or proximity. It's about trust, accountability, and knowing when to hold on and when to step back. It's messy, emotional, complicated, but sometimes those messy moments reveal what matters most. And what mattered most to me was my son and his safety, and knowing that even in fear, mistakes could become lessons. By the end of the week, we all sat together in the living room. My son napped in my lap. Leah sat across from me quietly knitting something small. My brother dozed on the couch. And I finally felt the fragile, careful relief of normalcy returning. Not perfect, not fully healed, but intact. And I understood fully that healing doesn't erase what happened. It just makes room for tomorrow.
Sitting in my living room now, with my son asleep in my arms, I feel the kind of quiet that only comes after a storm. Not the silence of empty rooms, but the soft, steady quiet of hearts settling. Mine, Leah's, even my brother's. The night she locked me out could have ended in disaster. I can still feel the memory of that cold porch, my hands pressed against the door, my chest tightening with panic. I remember how I imagined every terrible scenario, how my stomach churned, how my mind raced while all I wanted was to hold my baby and know he was safe. And yet, here we are. I've realized something that the fear didn't let me see in the moment. Panic doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from inexperience, from trauma, from being human. Leah didn't try to hurt me or my son. She made a terrible mistake, driven by fear and insecurity, and I have to respect that she is human, just as I am. What I couldn't have known that night, and what I understand now, is that people act in ways we can't always predict when they feel powerless. And it's in those moments we see the true measure of character. Not just theirs, but ours. I chose to confront fear with calm, to insist on boundaries without aggression, and to speak with honesty rather than accusation. That choice saved my son from being frightened further, saved our family from breaking apart, and ultimately allowed Leah to recognize her mistake and take responsibility. Holding my little boy in my arms, I feel a deep surge of love mixed with a quiet pride. Not for the drama, not for the confrontation, but for what came after. For the forgiveness, for the rebuilding, for the courage it takes to trust again after being hurt. The moral. The lesson I want to share is simple, though it took me years of parenting and nights like that one to truly understand. Mistakes will happen. Fear will cloud judgment. People we love will disappoint us, sometimes dangerously so. But anger alone cannot heal or protect. Patience, clear communication, and boundaries will. Forgiveness doesn't mean erasing the past. It doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't exist. Forgiveness is choosing to move forward with awareness, to hold tight to what matters: family, love, safety, without letting fear dictate every action. And boundaries matter. Sometimes love is giving someone the chance to step back, reflect, and understand the consequences of their actions. Sometimes love is holding your child close while the world spins with chaos around you, and knowing that calm, steady resolve can be more powerful than panic or force. Looking back, I think about that night often. The panic, the cold porch, the locked door, the sound of my baby crying through the wood.
the trembling hands of someone I trusted, someone I wanted to help, someone who simply didn't know how to handle the weight of responsibility. I could have let anger take over. I could have allowed fear to turn into blame, resentment, or long-term distance. But instead, I chose patience. I chose clarity. I chose to stand firm, but with empathy. And that choice changed everything. Leah and I are still learning how to coexist in this delicate, shared space. But the trust, once fractured, is slowly mending. We talk more now. We communicate expectations. We check in, constantly. The fear I felt that night hasn't vanished entirely, but it no longer rules me. And my son is safe, always. Connection to the audience. I share this story because I know many of you watching have faced moments of fear, betrayal, or panic, sometimes involving the ones you love most. Sometimes you've been locked out of a home, or a heart, or a relationship, figuratively or literally, and felt powerless. My question to you is this: in moments of panic, when fear threatens to take over, what choice will you make? Will you let anger dictate your actions, or will you seek calm, clarity, and understanding, even when it's hard? Sometimes the right choice isn't the easiest. Sometimes the right choice is the one that keeps everyone safe, even if it leaves your heart trembling. Final thought. The baby slept peacefully in my arms as I whispered to him, "We made it through, little one. You are safe. You are loved. Always." And I believed it. Because love is not perfect. But it is patient. It is steady. And it has the power to heal, even after fear, panic, and mistakes. Would you have reacted the way I did that night? Would you have chosen calm over anger? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever faced a moment where fear almost broke you, remember the choice to act with patience and clarity can change everything.